Most investors believe they are failing because the market is unfair, because timing is bad, because someone else always seems luckier. But Charlie Munger saw something different. He believed most investors are not failing. They are repeating themselves, repeating the same habits, repeating the same thinking patterns, repeating the same emotional reactions, year after year, cycle after cycle. And repetition is powerful, but only when it works in your favor. Most people repeat what feels safe. They repeat what feels familiar. They repeat what makes them feel busy, even when it quietly holds them in place. They read more news. They follow more opinions. They trade more frequently. They react faster. And they call this progress? But Munger would say, this is not progress. It is motion without direction, noise without signal, effort without edge. The market doesn't punish ignorance immediately. It lets you survive just long enough to believe your habits are fine. Small losses feel manageable. Mediocre returns feel acceptable. Being average feels harmless until years pass. And one day, you realize something uncomfortable. You didn't lose everything, but you also didn't build anything meaningful. Munger understood a hard truth. The biggest danger in investing is not stupidity. It is routine. Because routine removes awareness. You stop questioning. You stop slowing down. You stop asking whether what you're doing still makes sense. You confuse consistency with wisdom, activity with intelligence, confidence with understanding. Most investors don't fail dramatically. They fade quietly. They follow the same process even when the environment changes. They hold the same beliefs even when evidence shifts. They protect their ego instead of their capital. And slowly, without noticing, they lock themselves into an average outcome. Munger never chased excitement. He chased clarity. He believed the goal was not to be active. The goal was to avoid repeating obvious mistakes. Because if you repeat the wrong habits long enough, the outcome is guaranteed. Not disaster, just average. And average, over decades, is far more dangerous than people realize. This episode is not about intelligence. It is not about stock picks. It is not about predicting markets. It is about habits. The quiet behaviors you repeat every day, the ones that feel harmless, but slowly decide where you end up. Because most investors aren't failing. They're just doing the same things again and expecting a different result. And Charlie Munger would tell you this: if nothing changes in how you think, nothing changes in where you arrive. One habit quietly keeps most investors average. They confuse activity with progress. Doing something feels responsible. Doing nothing feels dangerous. So they stay busy. They check prices the moment they wake up. They scroll headlines while eating breakfast. They watch analysis videos during breaks. They adjust positions late at night. Every action gives them a small sense of relief, a feeling that they are involved, that they are paying attention, that they are not falling behind. But Charlie Munger warned that involvement is not improvement. Activity creates the illusion of control. It feels like intelligence. It feels like discipline. But most of the time, it is just noise. Munger believed the market does not reward effort evenly. It rewards judgment. And judgment improves when decisions are rare. Average investors do the opposite. They react to every signal. They respond to every opinion. They treat information like opportunity. But more information does not mean better outcomes. It often means more confusion. So they trade more. They adjust more. They optimize what doesn't matter. They argue about small percentages while missing the large structural risks. Munger often said that the biggest investing mistakes come from trying to do something when nothing should be done. But waiting is uncomfortable. Silence feels like ignorance. Inaction feels like weakness. Patience feels like missing out. So people move not to improve results, but to reduce anxiety. They protect their emotions, not their capital. Munger's approach looked boring from the outside. Few decisions, long periods of stillness, occasional decisive action. Because he understood something most people don't. If you don't have a clear advantage, activity increases risk. Average investors stay average not because they lack effort, but because their effort is misdirected. They move constantly. They feel productive. They stay informed, but in the end, they don't move forward. Another habit quietly keeps investors average. They need constant action. Doing nothing makes them uneasy. Waiting makes them doubt themselves. Silence feels like risk. So they look for reasons to act. A headline becomes a signal. A price movement becomes a warning. Someone else's opinion becomes urgency. They tell themselves, this is discipline. This is responsiveness. This is staying sharp. But Charlie Munger saw it differently. He believed most investors don't trade because they have an edge. They trade because they are uncomfortable doing nothing. Action relieves anxiety. It gives the mind something to hold on to. It replaces uncertainty with motion. But the market does not reward emotional relief. It rewards correct restraint. Munger understood that waiting is not passive. Waiting is a decision. It requires confidence without feedback, conviction without applause, and the ability to sit with boredom while others chase movement. Average investors struggle with this. They feel the need to justify their involvement, to prove they are paying attention, to prove they deserve results. So they act. They enter too early, they exit too fast, they change plans mid-course, not because conditions changed, but because their patience ran out. Munger often said the best opportunities come infrequently, and when they arrive, they are obvious. But obvious opportunities require long periods of inactivity beforehand. Most people never make it that far. They burn their attention on small moves. They spend emotional energy on noise. By the time real opportunity appears, they are already exhausted. So they miss it. Or worse, they sabotage it by acting too soon. Constant action feels like control, but it is usually surrender. Surrender to fear. Surrender to boredom. Surrender to the need to feel involved. Munger believed if you can't tolerate waiting, you are structurally unfit for investing. Because compounding does not announce itself daily. It works quietly, slowly, uneventfully, and that makes most people restless. Average investors don't lose because they are wrong. They lose because they can't sit still long enough to let being right matter. Another habit that keeps investors average is outsourcing their thinking. They listen to experts. They follow recommendations. They trust opinions that sound confident. It feels efficient. It feels safe. It feels responsible. After all, someone else has done the research. Someone else has the experience. Someone else sounds certain. But Charlie Munger was deeply skeptical of borrowed conviction. He believed that once you outsource your thinking, you also outsource responsibility. When things go well, you feel validated. When things go wrong, you feel betrayed. But in neither case did you truly understand what you owned. Munger often said, you should never invest in anything you cannot explain simply. Not because simplicity guarantees success, but because complexity hides ignorance. Average investors rely on authority to avoid discomfort. It is uncomfortable to say, I don't know. It is uncomfortable to admit this decision is mine alone, so they borrow certainty. They repeat what others say. They copy conclusions without understanding the assumptions behind them. And when conditions change, they are lost, because borrowed thinking does not adapt. It freezes. Munger believed true investing requires ownership of thought. You must know why you bought. You must know what would make you sell, and you must accept being wrong without excuses. Most people avoid this. They prefer consensus. They prefer confirmation. They prefer someone else to blame. But consensus rarely creates outperformance. It creates comfort, and comfort produces average results. Munger respected independence more than intelligence. He believed a mediocre mind with discipline beats a brilliant mind that follows crowds. Because the market does not reward agreement, it rewards correctness, and correctness often feels lonely. Outsourcing thinking removes loneliness, but it also removes edge. Average investors are surrounded by opinions, but they own none of them, and when pressure comes, they discover something too late. They were never investing. They were just participating. Another habit that quietly keeps investors average is avoiding discomfort, especially the discomfort of admitting mistakes. Being wrong hurts, not financially at first, but psychologically. It threatens identity. It challenges self-image. It forces you to say, I was confident and I was wrong. Charlie Munger believed this moment separates serious investors from everyone else. Average investors avoid it. They don't admit mistakes. They explain them away. They blame the market. They blame timing. They blame unexpected events. Anything except their own judgment. So instead of correcting course, they rationalize. They tell themselves the thesis is still intact. That patience will fix everything. That selling now would only lock in failure, but Munger warned that refusal to admit error is far more expensive than being wrong. Because markets change, facts change. And when reality shifts, clinging to old beliefs becomes dangerous. Munger believed you should be constantly trying to disconfirm your own ideas, not to be pessimistic, but to stay honest. Average investors do the opposite. They seek reassurance. They look for opinions that agree with them. They consume information not to learn, but to feel better. And slowly, discomfort is replaced with denial. But denial has a cost. It turns small mistakes into large ones. It converts temporary losses into permanent damage. Munger often said the best investors are not the ones who avoid mistakes. They are the ones who recover from them quickly. That requires humility. And humility is rare, because admitting a mistake means accepting that you are not special, not immune, not smarter than the market. Average investors avoid this pain, so they carry their errors forward. They don't just lose money, they lose flexibility. And once flexibility is gone, so is the future. Another habit that keeps investors average is wanting results without building filters. They want good outcomes, but they don't build decision systems. They want confidence, but they don't define rules. They want consistency, but every decision is made from scratch. Charlie Munger believed investing without filters is not investing. It is gambling with better language. Filters are not predictions. They are boundaries. They tell you what not to do, what to ignore, what is beneath your attention. Average investors hate filters because filters say no. They remove options. They limit action, and limitation feels restrictive. So instead, people stay flexible, open-minded, ready to act on anything. But openness without structure is just exposure. Munger built his entire approach around avoiding obvious stupidity. He didn't ask, how much can I make? He asked, how can I avoid permanent loss? Filters protected him from himself. They prevented emotional decisions. They blocked seductive stories. They eliminated situations where one mistake could do lasting damage. Average investors don't do this. They evaluate opportunities one by one. They rely on intuition. They trust feelings in the moment. So every decision feels stressful. Every outcome feels personal. When things go right, they feel smart. When things go wrong, they feel unlucky. But there is no learning because there is no structure. Munger believed you only deserve the results your process can deliver. Without filters, success is accidental. Failure is inevitable. Average investors keep hoping the next decision will fix the past one. But without a system, each choice is isolated. Each outcome is fragile. And over time, fragile decisions break. Most people never choose to be average. They don't wake up one morning and decide to aim lower. They don't plan for mediocrity. They don't announce it. It happens quietly, through small habits, through repeated shortcuts, through decisions made to avoid discomfort. Charlie Munger understood this. He believed average outcomes are not the result of bad luck. They are the result of unexamined routines, doing what feels safe, following what feels familiar, choosing comfort over clarity. None of these feel dangerous in the moment. They feel reasonable. They feel justified. They feel normal. And that is why they work. Average is not a dramatic failure. It is a slow settling. You don't notice it day to day. You only see it when you look back and realize nothing truly compounded. Munger never tried to be extraordinary. He tried to be consistently rational. He avoided situations where emotions could dominate. He removed choices that tempted bad behavior not because he was smarter, but because he was honest about his own limitations. That honesty created distance. Distance from noise, distance from impulse, distance from regret. Average investors hope discipline will appear when it is needed. Munger built discipline in advance. He understood that behavior comes before outcome, that habits shape decisions, and decisions shape destiny. This episode is not a warning. It is an invitation to slow down, to examine what you repeat, to question what feels normal, because average is not forced on you. It is chosen, quietly, every day. And once you see that, you can choose differently.